Hi, I'm Emma. Today's video is actually per request. So it is a continuation of the video I did a few days ago when I talked about intuition and how it helped me and kept me safe during my abusive relationship, and especially as I got myself out of that. So I was a bit hesitant because I am a medical doctor and I like to have a license. So I was a bit hesitant to share more about this with you. But since it is such a big part of my own journey and such an important thing for me, I really feel that I will do it anyway. Firstly, so I'm not I'm not really your regular type of doctor anyway. So I'm using actually a lot of empathy in my own practice. And empathy is not the same as intuition, but I will show you how I'll use my empathy. So I have largely practiced, like after I got my license, the most part of my practice has been done in the regular healthcare centers. So I'm on my way to becoming a GP here in Sweden. And one time there was this elderly man who came in, and he had fallen out of his bed. So he was a bit over 80 years old. Some health concerns. He wasn't that stable any longer when he walked. He was a widower, and he had fallen out of his bed and then hit his head, like the forehead and the eye, on something. So he was there with a black eye. And I could see, like before I went into him, he was laying on the emergency bed. He had to be done some stitches. And I could really see like the look of defeat in his face. So a lot of elderly patients here in Sweden, they are very hesitant at calling the doctor or calling the healthcare. Like they don't want to be a burden, and like coming in there and having fallen out of your own bed. I could see on his face that he was embarrassed and felt really out of place. So I read up a bit on his files, and then I went in, and I had a med student with me who was following along to see how we did things. So I went in there with a big cheery smile, and I said, "So, got ourselves into a fight, have we?" And he lit up, and then he said, "Yeah, well, there's still some life here in the old man." And I asked him, "So where is your opponent? Did he have to take the ambulance to the large hospital?" And then he chuckled and he said, "No, I don't think you will see him anymore." Like indicating that he had finished him off. And I also laughed and I said, "That's a good, sir. You shouldn't waste the resources of the hospital in vain." So we just had this back and forth, and he shared up, and then we talked about, like, he started to tell me old stories from his youth while I cleaned his wounds and stitched him. And the med student that was with me she sort of dropped her chin a bit because that's not normally how you interact with patients. But that was something that I felt in that moment, that this man really needs a share up, and successfully I was able to share him up. So medicine is not only about like making a diagnosis or treating or giving the right pills. That's actually like a small part of medicine. A big part of medicine, and what we actually take the oath, like the Hippocratic oath, when we swear in that it's like seldom will you cure, but you will like often have to comfort and just try to make improvements in the patient's life. So it is like most patients have illnesses that you cannot cure, but you can always find something that you can make better or try to help them with, and you can always give them comfort. So that is what I'm putting a lot of effort into doing in my practice, and I'm using my empathy. And I know that many of you who have been in abusive relationships that do have a high level of empathy, and almost like you can feel the you can feel the tension or the mood in a room or in a person, even without them saying anything. You just can read it from their body language, from the way they are using their words. And that is perhaps something that you got like from when you were a young girl, that you were, learned how to read your surroundings because it was important for you. That's at least the story of many of us. And you might have a really high level of empathy, and you want others to feel good, and you want to increase their level of comfort, and you feel for them when they are going through troubles. That's really beautiful. I would say though that intuition is not really the same, and I will explain how intuition works. First, I will have to tell you another story just to illustrate. So, my grandmother on my father's side, I really liked her a lot. I was close to her, and she passed away. Well, it was just a few days before the separation from my ex. So it was like a doubly hard time at that period. The day that she had to go into hospital, like the last time that she went into hospital, I was actually like I was at work, and I had an electric bike that I went from the healthcare center to the like elderly home where I was in charge of one of the wards. And on my way back, I just got this feeling that I need to check on my grandparents. So I rode a bike to their house, and then I called them like on their intercom, and my grandfather said, "Oh, how good that you are here. Like your grandmother isn't doing well, and could you please come up?" And I went into the kitchen, and I had just to look at her, and I knew that like she's going into the hospital, and because she was like falling in and out of conscious at the kitchen table. So I sat next to her, and then she woke up, and we talked a bit, and I put my hand around her back and stroked her and told her that when I'm here and we're gonna take care of things. And we called the ambulance, and while we were waiting for the ambulance, I tried to make not scare her, and I didn't have all my equipment with me, but I tried to take her pulse, and then I felt on her arms, and I felt that her blood vessels on the arm were like rubber on one of the arms, and like really dehydrated. And just from that sign, I have never seen that in a patient before. So I know that she was very bad, and like the whole picture, it told me that like this is the last time she's going in. She's not gonna make it. She's going to die soon. And of course, my father was actually there, and my grandfather, they didn't know this. They had no experience from working with patients. Well, I told them, like when the ambulance came, and I told them, like, go and hug grandma and say goodbye, and tell her that we will visit her at the hospital. So they did that, and well, that wasn't the last time we saw her. We were able to see her at the hospital for like a week longer. And but how did I know then that she was going to die? She had not entered the active dying state. But this was like something I have learned. So I had the knowledge, and then I have the clinical vision that doctors talk about. Like we can go into a room, and when you have seen a lot of patients, like when you are experienced, then you can see like before the patient even starts to speak, like you can perhaps even make the diagnosis sometimes, and that is like we can't explain it, but the brain is making connections, like this diagnosis, or this patient is really ill, just from watching and like listen to how they talk. And so that was the vision and the visionary aspect. And but how did I know that I had to check up on her? That was intuition, or that was some knowledge, that I had this idea that I just have to check up on her, and I took another route, going back to work just to go by and check on her. So when you have this empathy, when you can look at someone and you can see what they are feeling and listen to them, that is probably the same thing as the clinical vision. Like you have been trained to watch people and see what they are feeling, or see the signals that they are sending, and like recognize it without having to consciously think and analyze, like, oh, he's got a frown, what does that mean? That would be they say that people with autism can sometimes have to do that. But there are, of course, different levels of empathy, like when you are not able to recognize, and when you have really high levels and you can really read people. Okay, so, but there are these insights that I shared, like, so I had the insight that I will go to my grandmother. So I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and my older sister, who is just 1.5 year younger than me, she had this experience. It was a few years ago when we were living close to each other. We were almost neighbors, and she was sleeping in the apartment with her husband and kids, and they were all asleep. And suddenly she heard someone say to her very clearly, "Wake up, wake up." And there was no one there. No one was talking to her, and her husband was asleep. But she went to see who had spoken, and when she came to the kitchen, then they had left a pan full with grease, and that had caught fire. So there was a fire in the kitchen, but it was still just on the stove area, and she was able to put the fire out. And my sister is convinced that this was someone helping me. Perhaps it was an angel. And I think that perhaps you have stories like this in your family, or perhaps you have experienced it yourself. Please comment below. It's very interesting to hear. I learned from my own experience that when I am developing myself and working through my flaws and healing, then the intuitive feelings get they come more frequently, and they are stronger. Now I also want to tell you that I'm not promoting that you try to channel some spirit or talk to mediums or things like that. I don't believe that that's good. And I can't tell you why. But I think that, like, the religious books say that you shouldn't dabble in that, like, different realms. So if you believe in them, then don't do it. And if you don't believe in it, stop wasting your time and money. And like the intuition is not when you go against reason. So sometimes people will like the reason says that they should really do something, but then they don't want to do it, so they say, well, I have this gut feeling that I shouldn't. But that is not intuition, that is just you not wanting to do it. And also, if you have been in an abusive relationship, some parts of you have been warped or twisted. You're like, especially when it comes to this person that you were in the abusive relationship with. You might have very strong feelings that you need to do what he wants, or you need to do what he asked of you. It feels really scary not to do that. And you have learned to put his needs and his wants and his well-being above yours. And you have learned that you are responsible for keeping him happy and keeping him safe, like almost like he is a little kid that cannot take care of himself, and that has become your responsibility. That is not your intuition. That is the trauma and the damage that has been done to your emotions. So in order for you to use your intuition, you need to heal and you need to work through this so that you can separate, like, where is this feeling coming from? If it is an anxious feeling and it is like, oh, he's calling, I have better answer, I better answer and do that thing that he wants. That's anxiety, that's not intuition, that is not gut feeling. So try to separate those out. Journaling helps a lot. Like, journal what you are feeling, why you are feeling that. Like, what are you afraid of when you think about the situation? What would you want? It really helps to take your thoughts further. Many of our thoughts are just the same pattern that repeats themselves over and over. And when you start to write them down, you will recognize that this is the same pattern that I had last time he asked for something. So this is the same thoughts and it's the same reaction and the same feeling inside. The more you learn about yourself and the more you learn about your own reactions and the more you try to like do the right thing, and the right thing is not always to sacrifice yourself for someone else, but when you try to take like the bigger, the higher road, the road where you are developing, the road where you are choosing life over this destruction, the more you do that, the more you will be able to see clearly. So we are getting in our own way. Sometimes we have, like, everyone can manipulate when it comes to relationships, even though some people do it like in this is extremely destructive way. But we also manipulate. Sometimes we do things for others, and like we have an expectation that we want them to be grateful, or we want to feel that we did something good. And it's good to know, like, why am I doing things? Am I doing things obsessively, like trying to help others, not to look at my own stuff? Journaling helps, therapy helps, and just interacting with the world really helps. When you've gone through trauma, then the brain is like more sensitive to threats. The activity in the amygdala in the brain, an area that deals with threat and negative feelings, the activity there is heightened. When you learn to connect to, well, the present moment through different routes, and calm your body down, then this activity will diminish and you will start to heal. You can do this by meditation. You can do it by taking a bath, going out in nature, going for a walk. Listen to music. It can actually be healing, but preferably like some more harmonic or classic music. Talking with persons that are safe, and when you feel that you are connecting authentically, caring for each other and listening, that can be really healing. And arts, like creating things, paint, perhaps you haven't done this since you were a kid, but it can be really fun, and it can really bring you to the moment just to work with the colors. It doesn't have to be like become anything. You can just like paint with the colors. Try it, it's really enjoyable. My younger sister, so not the one with the angel story, but my younger sister is a painter, and she paints this really, really beautiful paintings. She has been doing it since she was quite young. And she says that when I sit down to paint, it feels like it is not really me that is painting. It is like this creative force that I'm just that is going through me, and the ideas just flow. And I have the same feeling when I write. So I have been writing since I was little. It never gets published, but I'm happy to do it anyway. And it makes me forget a bit about the world just fades away, and I'm in the moment. This is called the flow state. Perhaps you've heard of it. And it's that moment when you really get engaged in what you're doing and you sort of lose track of time. Healing. It is healing, and try to find things that you enjoy doing. Joseph Campbell, the author of The Hero's Journey, he wrote that in order for you to find your purpose and what you really are made to do in life, you need to follow your bliss. So he was actually I think he was going to be a professor, but I can't remember the subject. But he had this last graduate paper that he had to write, and after that he was sort of promised tenure, but he just couldn't get himself to do it. And in his case, it was actually a true gut feeling that no, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. So he just left university, and he took his savings and moved into a little cabin and lived there for several years. And he didn't know what to do. But he said that, well, I really like reading about mythology, so that's my hobby. Perhaps I can just do that. And he didn't have money to buy the books, so he wrote letters to the different publishing companies and asked them, like, I really want to read this book. Could you please give me a copy? And many of them did. So he just spent a lot of time reading through all this mythology, not having an idea where it would go. But eventually, something just clicked. So he saw this commonality between all the mythologies in in the whole world. All the mythological stories are following the same pattern, and he called this the hero's journey. And he wrote the book. Now I think the book is called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and it's a quite well-known book. And I think that his book applies to our life as well. Like, it is this hero that has a mission, and in the beginning he doesn't want to do that. He wants to stay in the comfort of his own home, so he tries to not take up the quest. but eventually he is forced by circumstances to do that. And I feel actually the same way with this YouTube channel. So I have been reading, well, about narcissism since 2017, but before that I was also like studying the same subject. Why do some women like become so tired and ill, and why do some relationships really not work? And I was really struggling with things that I saw in my own childhood, and also with burnout symptoms, because well, my mother had that, and it was really hard to see her going through that for years. So I was reading and thinking about this problem, and then it became more into the toxic relationship realm, and I've been reading about it, and I tried to write about it, and I didn't know where it would go, but well, just before I started this channel, I felt this like, I have felt this almost push from the like, I feel that it is a meaning with me going through the relationship that I was in, and all the lessons that I had to learn. And even that it was a meaning that he found us twice, and I had to change a lot of things, and I had to quit 2 jobs, and then I just had this feeling like, no, I'm starting a YouTube channel, and it just came to me like that. And it really feels like this is something I meant to do. And I think that, like, this cliche is all over YouTube, but I think that you who are watching this are meant to be watching this. And I think that we can have a connection and a rapport or share thoughts, even though you are not watching me live. So this is information that I feel really needs to get out. There are a lot of channels dealing with narcissism, but they're not dealing with stalking, and they're not dealing with dangerous and they're not dealing with situations where your life is on the line, and that is what I want. I want to be a resource for women who find themselves in this very scary situation. And I want to share all the knowledge that I have myself picked up and what I am still learning, and share it with you. So this is sort of an intuitive thing, and I feel that I'm in the flow when I'm speaking to you. So let's see. Yeah. So have you noticed that the insights when you're thinking about a problem, and you can't, like, you don't come to a decision, or you can't solve it, and then you go and do something relaxing, like you take a bath or a nap or meditate or do some exercise, and then suddenly it just is there. There's the idea, there's the solution, and it's clear. So when you do this connection, like, you can't be living just in the past or in the future. You need to live in the moment, and you need to be relaxed. And this is when the insights will come to you. So I have shown you this book in another video, but I will do it again. And I am not getting paid from Amazon or something. I just really like to read. So this is a book written by Jacques Lucéran, And There Was Light is the name of the book. And so he lost his eyesight when he was 8 years old. And in his youth, he did become a leader for part of the French resistance, even though he was blind. And he did become the leader because he really developed his intuition. And this book is, like, it's amazing. He later became a professor as well, so he's very educated, and he learned a lot, but he learned to get around in the world even though he was blind. And he writes that in the beginning I was really blind, like I would bump into things, and Like I would fumble around. But then I started to realize that there was more to the world than what I had seen when I had my eyesight. So the sounds, they are not just coming and going. The sounds are like a continuum. So when someone speaks, that sound sort of echoes from the walls or from the area where they are, and it like fades away. So he could hear sounds, or he became aware of the sounds in another way, like how the sounds would be different if you were outside, if you were inside, and if the wall was closed, if there was a wall close to you or a bit far. And he also became aware of people's voices. So he says that I forgot how my mother or father looked like I couldn't remember anymore after a while. And when I meet new people, I create an image in my mind about the person who is speaking, but of course he doesn't know how they look like. But sometimes it would just be a big mouth with teeth, and sometimes I would envision the person really beautiful. And he says that every person changes. So they are like one way and then they are like another way. So the image in his mind would change. And he says, but there are some people who doesn't change. So there are some people who are very static and rigid. And those people are like very inauthentic, or they are doing bad things or lying. And then they would be very careful to not show like their true self. And then the person that they presented would be very rigid, and then he would sense like this person isn't authentic. He is not presenting his real self. And he could also hear from the voices when there was something wrong with the person. So he describes that one day his math teacher came in as normal to the lecture, and he sounded like cheerful. But when he spoke, then his voice, like it lifted just a small bit at the end of the sentence, like it didn't normally do. And he knew that, wow, something has happened that is really upsetting to my teacher. And he couldn't concentrate on the lesson because he could hear in the teacher's voice that something was really wrong, even though none of his comrades could pick up on it. And he later learned from the gossip that that was the exact day that the teacher's wife had divorced him or left their home. And he later used this knowledge in the resistance movement, and that of course is similar to the clinical vision, or the brain just sensing different patterns. But he also shares quite a bit about being like intuitively he knew what would happen when he tells like when he heard Hitler speak on the radio, like before anyone thought that it would be a war. He started to read German 1 or 2 hours a day, because he said that I knew that something is happening in Germany, like from hearing that man's voice, that the world will start to spin around Germany. So that is something important and horrible is going to happen, and I have to learn German. And that later saved his life, like several years later when he was captured by the Gestapo. Just him being able to speak in German saved his life. And it also, like when he was sent to Ravensbrück, the concentration camp, and that saved his life. So that was an intuition. And so it's just a tip if you want to read something on the subject. And I will also tell you about synchronicities. So if you haven't heard it before, it's a concept that Carl Jung talks about. This is when something happens in your life, like it's a coincidence that is impossible. So, and the most common one is like you think about the person and then they call you. But I had a really fun story about synchronicity. This was at the end of my basic training as a doctor before I got my license. Also at the healthcare center, actually, I was placed there. And on my break, I was going to take coffee from the machine, and there was like one person before me who took their coffee, and then I put my cup in, and I pressed the button, and it said, out of function, call service. And I was like, oh man! And then I looked at the person who was standing beside me, and that was the service person. And I was just, what? That's amazing. Like, how did you know that the machine was broke? And she says that, no, I didn't. I'm just here to do the like annual checkup. And I was so stunned that I told her, because I had just read about this concept of the synchronicities. And like when she was working on the machine, I stood there and chat, probably a bit like boundaryless. But I told her, like, that's really funny. I was just reading about synchronicities, and then you showed up just when the machine broke, and I wanted coffee. And I told her just what it, like the concept, what it was. And then she said, yeah, that keeps happening to me all the time. So yesterday my mom told her boyfriend that you're such a little rat. And just at that moment, there was actually a rat running like in our house. So she knew what I was speaking about. But it is when things are happening to you that is unexplainable. And according to Carl Jung, then it means that you are on the right path. So it's like a message that you are connected to your purpose and connected with the universe. And I also told you in the other video about the warnings and the help that I got from the universe or from God. And I think that when you are doing your best, you are of course not perfect, and everyone is on a journey. But when you are doing your best to become a better person and to do good in the world, then you are a person who are aligned with this good force. And you will get help, and you will get guidance, and you will develop yourself. So you will find something like the world needs good people. The world needs people who are trying to make it a better place. And every action that you do, like if someone does an evil action, you know how you say that every person is just like you are connected to 1,000 persons in like a couple of weeks. Like for example, since I started this YouTube channel, it has not fully been 4 weeks, but I have got over 1,000 views. So that's just 1,000 persons watching my videos. And those thousands are connected to another 1,000, like from their circle of friends or extended family. So you are like in 2 steps, you are connected to 1 million people. When someone does something bad, that has a ripple effect. So if someone is really mean to you, then you will close down a bit, and you will perhaps be a bit angry, or like perhaps you will also hurt someone in your turn, even though you might not mean to intentionally. And so it spreads, like it's like the dominoes. But the good actions also spread. And I think they have a more powerful effect, actually, because the good actions, they really speak to our heart, and they have a profound effect on us on another level. So try to align yourself with the good, work on yourself, get to know yourself and get to know your intuition, and write it down in a journal. Try to test it out in some small ways to see what happens when you follow those small ideas. I saw a documentary, it was a few weeks ago, but I don't remember which one I saw. I don't remember the name of the documentary, but it was actually about serial killers, so quite gruesome. But one of the serial killers got eventually caught, and it was after he had captured a young man and, well, gotten rid of him and his body. And then, because of his mother, this young man's mother had put a receipt in his, like the inside of his jacket pocket that morning before he went to his work. And that was actually the evidence that later led to this serial killer being caught. And the mother in this series, she describes it like, I just got this feeling that I need to put a receipt in his pocket. And I usually follow those feelings. I call them God whispers. So test those out if you get those little feelings and see where they lead you. I think that was it. Yeah, it was a long video. This is Emma holding up a light over the bridge. Remember, there is always a way out. There is always a way forward. Please be safe, take care, and please comment below.